listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good evening, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Tuesday, September 3rd. I'm your host, Michael Leva, joined by a very special guest you all know and love, Josh Moser from WSVN 7, South Florida's #1 news station. Josh, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Ready for the season. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm ready for another football season, too. It feels like it's been forever since we've had a game, although I know it was only January, but that one didn't end well. So we want to get off on a better foot in 2024.
I mean, you don't love the preseason, you know?
Yeah.
Those 3 games.
It was a lot. Yeah, I know. A lot of the rookies played well. But we're going to talk about all that stuff. But first, today's show is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, your Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? Don't worry. Visit Caneswear.com to shop the inventory from the comfort of your home. And yes, they ship internationally as well. Caneswear.com is a spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. All right, so week 1 here, it's upon us. We've got a game this Sunday. Before we get into Miami-Jacksonville, let's sort of take a step back and look at where the team was at the end of 2023 with that roster, where the roster is now at the start of 2024, now that we got down to the 53-man roster. Do you see this roster of the Dolphins in 2024 better, worse, or equal to the roster it had in 2023?
Overall, I think it's better. Obviously, the big piece that's missing is Christian Wilkins, and really there hasn't been somebody that they have found to replace him, but there was a reason they just got outbid, you know, and obviously you lose Robert Hunt on the offensive line. That would be another piece that is missing. But when talking to the team and Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel, they love their offensive
line.
Not
worried. Not worried.
So, you know, Liam Eichenberg may play 3 positions again this year. You know, we'll see what happens. The biggest thing, though, is health, as we've talked about. But the continuity with the offense now going into the 3rd year of Mike McDaniel, obviously they were the #1 offense in the league last year. Devon Achane's expected to take a huge jump. And I know fans that are watching are worried because there's only 4 wide receivers on the active roster week 1. We know that there will be a change in the offense this year with a lot more 12 personnel. So we're talking the 2 tight end set with Jonnu Smith brought in, and they're going to run the ball more. They're going to control the clock more. We're going to see all of that great play action stuff where the ball's out of Tua's hand for short passes in less than 2 seconds. And this team should score 30 points a game. So you have enough on offense, and defensively, you know, you got a lot stronger at linebacker. That's where probably the weakest part of this defense was last season. But on paper right now, this looks like a team that could contend not only for the AFC, Mike, but I think this team is a legitimate Super Bowl contender going into the season.
Yeah, and I really do hope they run the ball more with more consistency because a couple things. A, when you run the ball more, there's less risk of your quarterback being hit and hurt. Number 1. Number 2, that offensive line is much better as a run blocking line than it is as a pass blocking line. And I think they can run block with any of them. It's more about the worries in pass blocking. And number 3, when you got those types of backs, including the rookie from Tennessee, who showed us a little something in camp and in the preseason games, I want the ball in their hands is not as much as possible because you got Hill and Waddle, obviously, but you want to give them equal touches and have them involved in the game. So I really hope they run more, especially in those, 3rd and short, 4th and short situations where we've seen them all game get 4 yards a carry, 5 yards a carry, 6 yards a carry. You get to a third, fourth, and short, and we're throwing a pass, and fans are going, why? But so I do hope we can run more with more consistency, because I think that's the secret sauce that they're kind of missing. Everyone says they're a finesse team, this, finesse team, that. Yeah, but if you can run it with consistency, that will open up the passing game even more too.
Absolutely. I mean, and especially with all the speed that you have. And Jonnu Smith is really a sneaky acquisition for this team. He wanted to be here. He took less money to come here. And his pass catching abilities, as well as what he can do in the pass block and the run block game that you mentioned. We know Durham Smythe. We know who he is. Julian Hill is going to take another step. So you've got players that can play that position. Obviously, Connor's another one, converted wide receiver that's done really, really well. And, you have pieces now that can really control the clock. And then if Tua can make the right decisions, and we've seen Tua, he's slimmed down. He said that he's going to bust out the legs more if the pocket collapses. So, he played every single game last season after coming off the concussion-ridden season the season before. So offensively, this should be one of the top 3 offenses in the league. And so now it's a matter of, can you execute? And I think a cool question that I think fans are excited to see, I'm personally excited to see, is how special teams are going to impact the game with this new kickoff situation. I think that could change a game. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement right now, and we haven't touched on Anthony Weaver, but the players love playing for him. That is a huge difference than Vic Fangio. Last year, there were players that liked Vic Fangio, but there has not been a single bad thing said about Anthony Weaver. And when you get the thumbs up from a guy like Jaylen Ramsey, they call him Gold Jacket. I mean, when he's sitting out here and saying we are different, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But one thing first is this offseason, the one thing they've done in Miami is they've locked up Waddle long-term. Tyreek got his new money. Tua, obviously, and now Mike McDaniel as of last Friday, to sort of bring their contracts kind of in alignment. Not exactly, but close enough to okay, you guys are kind of all aligned. We got some runway in front of us here where we're going to try and win something of consequence here with this group, this core. And it seems like there's a lot with that security in place for all those guys who are the big names on this team. It brings a lot of positive vibes, I think, to the entire team heading into the season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, obviously you don't want to go into a season into a quote unquote lame duck year for everybody watching from South Florida. They're watching the poor Marlins manager. He's going to be hung out to dry here. I feel so bad for Skip Schumacher, who was the manager of the year in the National League last year. But to extend Mike McDaniel and to get him through 2028, that's the same amount of time as Tua. It's the same amount of time as Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle's got an out the year before. But look, it's what works. We knew that Tua and McDaniel were going to be tied together regardless. If Tua left, McDaniel is probably out as well. So I love that here you have Stephen Ross, who we know is getting older and who said he's all in on a Super Bowl. He has turned this team into a financial juggernaut by adding F1, the stadium renovations. This is probably a top 10 valued NFL team now. If you include everything, probably top 5, if you put everything with it, including real estate. So look, everything is in place. You have continuity and consistency. And when you have that and it's not the turnover, we've talked about there's been a different defensive coordinator every single year over the past 3 years for Mike McDaniel. And now it seems like they have a fit in Anthony Weaver. Obviously, they haven't played any games. But yeah, to get all of those guys locked up, to know that you're going to be there, to understand that the organization's investing in you, and there is a long-term plan, and they believe they're a top 5 team going into the season in cap space. So you're talking about a potential extension getting done for a guy like Javon Holland. You're talking about leaving room to sign a veteran because the bye week is so early this year. So I really like the position that they're in. I like the feel around the building. And, we haven't touched on Odell Beckham Jr. at all. Here's another offseason acquisition. So
what's going on with him? What's going on?
So last week, general manager Chris Grier finally came out and said publicly that Odell had an off-season knee procedure. Now, I do not know the extent of that. Obviously, if you look at the duration of any normal time frame, it would completely rule out an ACL, which we know that he has had in the past. But you're looking at a potential cleanup of something. I don't even want to speculate. But
Yeah.
Grier said that it was the team's decision to put him down on the PUP list to miss the first 4 games. Odell felt that he was ready to go. However, I believe because of how early that bye week is and understanding what happened to this team last year, essentially falling apart in that Monday night game against the Titans late in the year, it's about winning games in December, January, and hopefully in February. And the first 3 months of the season, you're just hoping to get through it and put enough away so that you can get to the dance. I remember covering the Packers. They came in as a wild card team and they went on to win the Super Bowl. So we go back to last year, how important it is to get home field advantage. I truly believe if that game was played here instead of Kansas City, I think the Dolphins have a chance to win that game. So there's a lot in play, but I think this was specifically about keeping him healthy. And if you can get Jaylen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, and Odell Beckham rolling in November and December, the AFC better look out.
I also think, too, with week 2 being on a Thursday, that short week, you probably don't want to push him on a Sunday, then him come back on a short week.
No.
Let's take off the first month. Let's see where we're at then. I think that short week 2, does change a lot of things with probably a few of these guys who are kind of like an Aaron Brewer and stuff like that. It's like that does throw like a monkey wrench into things a little bit, into how much are we going to push them weeks 1 and 2.
Right. I mean, look, you get the Jaguars at home to open. That's a very, very winnable game. They've got a lot of weapons. Trevor Lawrence got paid this offseason. However, you should win that game, and then you should finally beat the Bills. Like, this should finally be
it. This has got to be it. It's got to be it this year.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're kind of up in Bills territory up there, but
yeah,
this should be it. And then you go to Seattle. It's really tough going across the country, but you've got 10 days. You have the little mini bye week right there. Then you've got the Patriots, who are a mess. So, I mean, this should be a 3-1, 4-0 start. And then if you can get healthy out of that and get your players back for week 5 to go to the Patriots, I think you're doing really well. I'm sorry, it was Tennessee week 4. So, I mean, the schedule lines up perfectly to not have your weapons in the first 4 games. But going to this bye week, I truly think that this team's 4-1.
Yeah, and as I said about the Bills, they are 2-13 in the last 15 meetings. Just split. I don't have to sweep them.
Yeah.
Just you got to split if you want to overtake them. You can't get swept by them every year and think you're going to pass them in the standings. It just makes it so much harder. And again, their first part of the schedule, I don't want to say it's soft because it's not, but you look from Thanksgiving on, that Packers game on, that is as brutal of a stretch as I've seen any team have, with San Francisco on the road, at home, Houston on the road, the Jets twice home and away. At Cleveland's never an easy one. That is a brutal. So they better get some wins early, because I'm not saying they're going to fall apart late like they have the past couple of years, but you want to build yourself a little bit of a cushion. So because that's tough after Thanksgiving. You mentioned the defense, and you sort of spoke about Christian Wilkins, and I think how Miami replaces him, because I don't think Calais Campbell can do it by himself at this age. I think he's going to be a big part of that defense, obviously, but how much that front 3 and the front 7 overall, even without Chubb at the start of the year, sort of comes together. Because I'm less worried about the secondary, but that side of the ball with Weaver, and they lost a lot of guys. Xavier Howard's gone, Andrew Van Ginkel's gone, Raekwon's gone, Wilkins is gone, Elliott's gone, Brandon Jones is gone, and Jerome Baker's gone. Those are a lot of familiar faces and guys who are here for many years. And I think in the secondary, they're fine, but that front 7, are you worried a little bit? Not worried? I mean, it looks totally different. So I think that's why there's some questions.
Yes. So the cool thing about the front 7, specifically with Anthony Weaver, is the versatility that you have. You hear it's not going to be a traditional 3-4, even though it is going to be a 3-4, but you're going to have a lot of guys that can play with their hand in the ground, or they can also rush standing up. And I think that's where Jaylen Phillips is really the X factor of what he can do coming off the Achilles injury. He told me that he's ready to go. Mike McDaniel was kind of saying, he may be on a little bit of a pitch count here, but if you can get pressure on the quarterback without blitzing, I mean, that's obviously the key. It's just really, what can Zach Sealer take on? He was just named a captain. I know it was salt and pepper with him last year with Christian Wilkins, but he was paid to be a primetime player, in that front. They had Tier Tart that they brought in. They let him go. So this team's really missing that true nose tackle. So, But again, you're talking about Jalen Ramsey on the back end. We've got Fuller that was brought in. He's a significant upgrade. And then you've got Poyer in the back.
Yep.
So he was a great upgrade for the veteran minimum. And then you have Javon Holland, who in my opinion is a top 5 safety in the league right now. So you have enough on the back end. It's just a matter of the blitz packages and what Anthony Weaver is going to do to disguise, what he has. I mean, Etienne is a premier back in this league for everybody that plays fantasy. That he was one of the first backs taken in this league. And then, Christian Kirk's a bona fide number 1 if he's healthy. So we'll see what happens with him. But Calvin Ridley's gone. So, what are you going to do there? But I mean, this is a winnable first game. I think there should be enough, but I think it's going to evolve. And as Chop Robinson gets more reps, he's certainly a player to watch. We really don't know yet what he's going to be, but there's a lot of liking to him. And then David Long Jr. is just one of my favorite guys, named a captain on this team. And then you've got Anthony Walker brought over from the Browns. If he gets healthy, Mike McDaniel called him one of his favorite players. So there are pieces there to replace some of the big names. But like you said, it's going to be different. And then one of the big things from last year was that Jalen Ramsey could only play man. He was told, just stick your guy, take him out of the game. So now you've got, him expressing what he wants to do. And when you move 5 around and let him play center field a little bit as a corner, there's a lot to be done with that. And I think really the biggest thing, I know he's back on the practice squad, but for you to cut Nick Needham, who can play safety, who can play in the nickel package, brings a lot of versatility, to let him go, says a lot about what they think they have in a guy like Storm Duck. And then we haven't seen Cam Smith really yet. We'll get a view of him after 4 weeks. So they've got a lot of bodies, but there should be enough there. But this is an offensive team, Mike. I mean,
it is. Outscore them. Got to outscore them. That's what it is.
This offense should score 30 points a game. I think, what was it? The Rams scored like 32 or 33 a game.
Something like that, yeah.
So, I mean, this team, no doubt in my mind, with what you have, it should be 30 points a game. And
if you're going to invest all that money,
that's it.
If you're going to invest all that money in offense, you better score. That's all. I mean, otherwise you're not getting the return on investment that you just put out. Even like a small move, like trading a 3rd round pick next year to get a 4th round pick this past year for Wright in the draft. Like that's, it's the draft is what it is, but you just give up a 3rd round pick for a 4th round pick just to take a running back, a 3rd running back this year. You want return on investment, not just long-term, but even now, because that's like, they've just invested so much in offense, which is wise because it's an offensive league, that the return on investment needs to be there. And yes, they better outscore folks most weeks. I mean, not every week. There's going to be some games. It's going to be probably a low scoring affair, but not many. Most weeks you better be 24, 27, 28 points minimum.
Sure. I mean, and now we're talking about, you go to this 12 personnel and you go to this, I would argue, maybe the best backfield in the league as far as depth when you're talking about Moser, who
even Jeff Wilson.
You kept Jeff Wilson. You let Chris Brooks go. Obviously, he had the concussion issues. But Wright is flashed here in the preseason. So you've got 3 guys that can hit home run anytime. You've got all guys can catch out of the backfield. We saw Devon Achane split out wide in the preseason and caught a pass as essentially a wide receiver, which you never see happen. So I think that was just a look that Mike McDaniel threw out just to say, hey, this guy can do this. You need to guard this. So, remember, you can always put Odell Beckham Jr. in the slot when he gets healthy, which I think is going to be the situation. You've got Braxton Berrios who can do that now. And remember, Wes Welker is leading this room. So you've got a lot of guys. Eric Stoodsville, I mean, he was a head coach for the Broncos. He's beloved. I mean, the pieces are all there. It's just simply, can you execute? And the feeling around the building is, I mean, this team knows that they're good. So they just got to execute and just stay healthy. And they should be looking at their first playoff win, in my opinion, in 24 years.
Yeah, and they have faith in their staff. Otherwise, I don't think they would be as confident in that offensive line. They have faith in Frank Smith and the offensive line coach's name. What's his name?
Butch Barry.
Butch Barry, to coach up what they have instead of paying someone. Even Jack Driscoll. Thanks. We signed you for a few months. You can go. They have the faith in their internal staff to coach up what they have there. And I think the 3 key players to watch this year on offense, it's Achane, and how, because if you get him the ball, he's special. And on the other side of the ball, Chop Robinson, how they utilize him, because we know in the run game, a little bit of a liability, not like most rookies are. It's nothing to worry about. And also Marcus May. Marcus May has started 77 games in this league. He won't be starting in Miami, but when you got a guy who started 77 games in the NFL on your roster coming off the bench, that is valuable. I think those are the three guys that are going to just to watch a little bit this year, because I think if they play well, they can fill some holes and gaps that could elevate this team moving forward, because I think secondary depth is always key. And offensive weapon, I think Achane is. Everyone's watching Hill. Everyone's watching Waddle. Here's Moser. Oh, yeah. Here's this Achane guy lined up in the slot, running the ball. That's big time.
Oh, yeah. So, well, let's break some news here on Dolphins Talk.
All right.
So Chop Robinson is a fan favorite. For everyone listening, this is a reason to watch him more on Sunday. This past weekend, I asked him, what are you going to do? How are you going to celebrate? And he's like, oh, my mom's actually having surgery. His mom is a colon cancer survivor. Now she's in for a second surgery she had this weekend. Everything went well. And so here you have a guy that spent his weekend taking care of his mom. He's got all the big family, brothers and sisters. And this guy is salt of the earth, and he's playing for his family. Like, this is his moment. And you talk about the right people bringing him in, and they purposely put his locker right next to Raheem Mostert, who is just another stand-up individual to learn from him. So if you're not a Chop Robinson fan, this is another reason to be, and it's going to be very special seeing him come out of the tunnel. They've invested a lot of money in him, and everyone raves about who he is. And when you talk to him, man, he just lights up, and you forget he's 22. I mean, this team has hit on their draft picks, and it looks like Chop Robinson is going to be another example of Chris Grier finding the right guy, not only in the slot, but for his actual locker room and for a fit on the team.
Yeah, we had Sean Merriman on the podcast a few weeks back, and he's from Maryland. Chop Robinson's from Maryland. He goes, I'm not just saying this because we're both from Maryland. Chop Robinson was a steal of the draft, in his opinion, and he's going to win Rookie of the Year on that side of the ball. Sean Merriman could not say enough good things about Chop Robinson, and it's also nice to hear that he's a good person as well off the field. That's always nice. Makes him easy to root for, and he just seems like a good guy, which is awesome. But yeah, should be fun. Okay, so we're going with Miami this week over Jacksonville. We think they should win, and then it's on to the Bills that short week. That's gonna be huge.
It's a home game, so I believe it's something like 70% of home teams win that Thursday night game. But it's the proverbial, like, get the monkey off your back. I mean, you want to talk about making a statement, go beat Josh Allen in week 2, and not only beat him badly. I mean, but you look at the Bills, Matt Milano is hurt again. I mean, you feel for the guy. He's
got no wide receivers. They have no wide receivers that put any fear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've got James Cook, who's from the area that people, all know about. But, I mean, unless
Dalton Kincaid's their best weapon. Kincaid's their best weapon. Yeah.
Yeah. Great tight end. But, I mean, unless you let Josh Allen get out of the pocket and run all over the field, there's just not enough there. And in my opinion, but I mean, you would have to turn the ball over 3 times in this game. I mean, but I forget, Mike, do you know offhand? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Do you know who the Bills have week 1?
Arizona at home, 6.5 point favorite.
And that's a winnable game for them too. So
it's a winnable game for them. But I want to see that offense. I think it's going to be a more run-based offense and thrown to the tight ends, which is fine because we saw once they went to Joe Brady, like in November of last year or so, or October, and they started to run the ball more, he turned it over less, and they got hot, and they won the division, obviously. So if they just run the ball, but I think they need one wide receiver, and I don't trust any of their wide receivers. That's me. I don't think Curtis Samuel puts a fear of God in anyone. I think Shakir is just a nice player, and that rookie from Florida State's got a great personality, likable kid, but he was picked around 2 for a reason. He's slow. And I don't know if he's a number 1, and they might ask him to be a number 1, and I don't know if he's a number 1 in this league. So I think it's a prime spot for Miami. Short week. You're at home. You got them probably trying to find themselves in offense a little bit. If Miami can if they can't win that game against, I don't know when they're ever going to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Keon Coleman. He gives some great interviews.
But he's great in interviews, talking about the quotes and everything. Yeah, it's
when
hilarious.
You talk about Anthony Weaver and the weapons that they have, I mean, you're talking about, put an 8th defender in the box and go beat Jalen Ramsey and Fuller one-on-one with Javon Holland playing center field or Poyer playing center field, or even show a safety blitz, every time. Like, I mean, I just don't know how you beat that unless they have to go zone for some reason and let Josh pick them apart. But I don't think that that's going to happen. But again, you're talking about them on defense as well. I mean, you're whole new safeties for them. You really don't know who's healthy on that team. Milano, their star's out. Their defensive front is still good. Rousseau's good. But you should still put up 28 to 30 points like that against. There's no reason that the Dolphins offense shouldn't have 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals against that team.
And here's the thing. If you're Miami and you've almost never beaten this team, if you don't have that game circled on your calendar going, we got to take care of them, especially after week 18 last year when they pretty much won the AFC East in your building. If you're not up for that game against them, then something's wrong. I mean, you got to be ready for that game. You got to have your A game week 2.
I mean, Skylar Thompson almost went into Buffalo
in a playoff
game. So, but yeah, I mean, divisional game to kick off the calendar. I mean, fans, we all look at that set of excitement, but I mean, who's going to stop Tyreek Hill? Like, are you kidding me? Like, yeah. I mean, to me, it's go on your whatever betting application you want, and I would be picking.
I wish that game was week 1. I really do wish it was week 1.
That'd be great.
That would be great. But we have to wait one more week, and we will. Let's get past Jacksonville this week, hopefully, and then it's on to Buffalo on a short week. Josh, thanks so much for a few moments every time. Everyone, be sure to follow Josh on Twitter at The Mose Knows, MOZKNOZ, The Mose Knows, and also watch him on South Florida's #1 news station, WSVN 7, and of course with Drew Rosenhaus every Sunday evening. That's always a great spot with Drew. Gets a lot of good insight there. Josh, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again next week.
You got it. Thanks, Mike.
Take care, everybody.